Ariana Madix is finally opening up about this lawsuit from Tom Sandoval. We have a Girardi criminal trial update because that is still ongoing. We have a Salt Lake, or not Salt Lake, sorry, a Real Housewives of Orange County star that is being sued for alleged fraud. We have a lot that we're going to get into, so let's dive in. You're listening to No Filter with Zach Peter, your go-to source for all the latest pop culture and reality TV tea, served fresh all week long. Now, let's dive in. What's up? What's going on? Hi, guys. We have a lot that we're going to get into. Ooh, Danny's already getting the live chat fired up. Danny Gossip Gal says Chris Olsen really got really upset because of nasty comments and he was getting on social media for no reason, I believe. I also have no idea who he is really. We're going to get into all of that. So we'll get into the Chris Olsen stuff because we do address it and we have kind of a heated or at least I got heated in today's episode of the Pop Report. So I highly suggest that you guys go and listen to today's episode of the Pop Report because we do dive into the Chris Olsen revenge corn on the cob situation because obviously revenge corn on the cob is a term that's being thrown around a lot lately. And it relates a lot to Rachel Leviss, but you can I think we talk about it for a good chunk of the tail end of this today's episode of the Pop Report. But I want to touch on it further because I continue to do a little digging and I still have feelings about this. And I'm curious, since this is a live chat, what people, also think about it. Because listen, when I want to research a big topic, I want to make sure I know all the details about this topic. And the more I find out, the more I have questions. And the more I don't like when influencers try to manipulate their audience with their emotions to garner sympathy rather than take accountability. So we'll get into that at the end of today's episode, but we will start with, let's see, what should we start with? I guess let's touch on the Ariana of it all. Well, actually, shout out to the Traitors and Peacock. Peacock just announced that the Traitors has been renewed for a season 4 and season 5, neither of which have been filmed, and it's unlikely that either of them have been cast yet because they just got the pickups. But we do know season 3 is supposed to be airing, it looks like possibly January if they stick to the same schedule. We'll have the Peacock airing season 3 of The Traitors with Tom Sandoval and Dorinda Medley and Sierra Miller and a lot of other people that are on. We have the gay guy from the UK, the Prince or King Charles's gay cousin is in it. We have Britney Spears' ex-husband Sam who's in it. So lots of people that are in season 3. I'm looking forward to season 3. Okay, let's talk about Ariana Madix. So she was on Watch What Happens Live promoting the Love Island reunion. She's in New York right now. She's performing her second stunt doing Chicago on Broadway. She plays Roxy Hart. So she's off doing that. She stopped by Watch What Happens Live to promote the reunion that's going to be coming out for Love Island because she is the host of Love Island. And she addresses some of the Vanderpump stuff. So she talks about Tom Sandoval suing her, which she tells Andy was a really bad day for her, which I would imagine, finding out that Sandoval is suing you is crazy. She said that she seemed skeptical of Tom Sandoval blaming it all on her lawyer. Andy kind of asked her, like, what do you think of Sandoval saying that it was all his lawyer's doing? And so he fired the lawyer. And she kind of just like shrugged her shoulders and she's like, I don't know. But she said that it was a really bad day for her, which I would imagine because not only is she getting sued by Rachel Leviss, but then she's getting sued by Tom Sandoval, all while she's trying to film Love Island. So I would imagine having to compartmentalize was tough for her. But yeah, she was, Sarah from Real Housewives of Dubai, who was also on the show with her. She was being a little shady. I was like not feeling Sarah. Sarah was like rolling her eyes and like, kind of being a hater while Ariana would talk. And I'm like, I don't know what this Sarah chick's deal is or why she doesn't like Ariana, but she was definitely coming across as a bit of a hater. I was like, girl, chill out, yo. But yeah, that was Ariana on Watch What Happens Live. What else? She talks about Schwartz. She hasn't spoken to Schwartz since production wrap for this most recent season. And then she does also talk about Sheena, shenanigans. She says that their friendship took a big hit after the reunion. They're not as close. They don't talk as much as they used to, but there is still a lot of love there. So, Let's talk. That's Ariana. Ariana. How about a Tom Girardi trial update? So we are into week 2 of the Tom Girardi trial. It is continuing. I believe it's expected to wrap by next week. They're still interviewing witnesses. So this week's testimonies primarily focused on people that used to work in the financial department of Girardi Keese, former consultants, former employees, former accountants that were overseeing the money or managing the day-to-day funds at Girardi Keese. And a lot of them had a lot of questions, but a lot of them seemed to be claiming that, they were just doing what they were told by, under the guidance of Tom Girardi, which is interesting because Tom Girardi's attorneys, he has a public defender. He doesn't even have a real attorney, he has a public defender. Oh, Sin City Z Chick says, according to Sheena, Ariana stopped responding to her way before the finale. So is Ariana just using that as an excuse now? I don't know. Good point. But I mean, Ariana has been very busy. But back to Tom Girardi. So a lot of the people that are participating in the trial, whether they're former clients or former employees of Girardi Keese, a lot of them seem to, say that Tom was very much in control of things, or even if he wasn't managing the day to day, moving of the pennies, he still was aware of what was going on. And we knew that because they're revealing voicemails and email correspondence that show that Tom Girardi was aware that people were not getting their settlement money. His public defender attorneys are very much trying to make it seem like Tom Girardi got old and the firm was too big and he couldn't handle any of this. So it was really just the people that he hired in place to, run this that were the ones that were kind of mismanaging the funds. But it looks like, a big part of his defense is that Christopher Camone, the CFO, is the one that was, running these schemes on the side and was also stealing money from Girardi Keese, which may be true. But also on top of that, there's stuff that dates back to pre-Christopher Camone, so before Camone even came into place. And it sounds kind of like, some of the people that he had in place maybe weren't fully qualified, and that may have been why they were hired, potentially. Seems to be part of the argument that's being made in court is these people were hired because they weren't fully aware of running a business of this magnitude and, managing funds of these, of this magnitude. And therefore, it was easier for him to kind of just like get them to do certain things that they weren't going to question because they didn't really know any better, you know? So, yeah. Jackie asks, when will you be traveling for your live shows? Not until 2025, next year, next spring. Probably starting in like April through the summer. So, next spring, 2025. Okay, what else came out of the drawer? I mean, that's kind of really what it is. He's trying to say that, or his attorney's trying to argue that he doesn't have all his faculties. And that's part of why things kind of got out of hand, is he was just trusting other people that he wasn't able to trust. And so he's kind of throwing the blame back onto them, when it's not to say that they're entirely innocent, because obviously they also have a duty. And if there were things that were being mismanaged, then they had a duty to report certain things, or to, at least to make sure that the operation was run in a more kosher way, right? Because if you're the employee and you're overseeing that department, that does fall back on you if there is any legal pushback. And now we're seeing Tom Girardi's not protecting any of his former employees. He's willing to throw anybody under the bus to save himself. What else? Okay, so it's now, I guess, been confirmed. I don't. Well, we heard that there was $20 million that was, or there was a $20 million estimate of value that was spent to cover expenses for EJ Global, Erica Jayne's company. But on top of that, we find out that there were, luxury cars and private jets and all these personal expenses that, were being written off by the company. But when it comes to Erica specifically, we actually have a breakdown of the annual expenses. And it's now, we've, I guess, now determined that it is 21 million, not 20. I guess 20 was like the estimate, but now at this point, it's they've been able to map it out to 21 million, that over the course of a decade, 21 million was used to pay off EJ Global expenses, which a lot of people had Amex cards, is what we're also figuring out. And all of their Amex cards were being paid through the Girardi Keys books. So multiple people had American Express cards, just like Erica did. Those credit card statements would go to Girardi Keys, and the CFO, the accountant, whoever was managing the day to day of those expenses, they were paying for all of those credit card bills and apparently mixing everything together. But so it looks like, so this comes from the Talk of Shame, Kiki Monique. Shout out to Kiki, who's been, boots on the ground at the actual courthouse almost every day discussing this. And so she captured an estimate of what was being spent on EJ Global annually. So in 2010, it looks like they spent over 5 million in expenses for EJ Global. In 2011, it looks like there was over 2 million in expenses. In 2012, over 4 million in expenses. In 2013, it was over 1.5 million. In 2014, it was over 1.7 million spent in expenses or covered expenses. In 2015, it was 1.8 million. 2016 was over 2.2 million. But then come 2017, it was under a million. It was 852,000. In 2018, it was over 761,000. In 2019, it was over 107,000, and then come 2020, it was 147,000. So it went from year one in 2010 to 5 million all the way down to 147,000. Sorry. Brian Scott Patterson says, as an LLC business owner, I mean, come on, one thing that would be obvious is your personal life is not your business life. Yeah. I think a lot of times people mix things in based off of, how they're able to write off certain lunches or dinners or whatever. Um, but so yeah, it's a lot of money. But so I guess the argument was that, they were previously spending a lot of money on EG Global, and then those expenses got cut down. They were writing these off as loans, as receivables, basically meaning, oh, well, we loaned $2 million to EJ Global this year, so we're expecting to get that back. And if we don't get that back in the loan, then, we can write it off as a loss, right? We made that investment. It was a bad investment. We didn't get an ROI. However, the interesting thing is, come 2017 is where it dips over 1 million. And if we look up, when did Erica Jayne join Real Housewives of Beverly Hills? I believe it was 2016. It was season 6, and season 6 aired in it aired in 2015. Oh, wow. So 2015, there were over 1.8 million in expenses, and in 2016, there was over 2.2 million in expenses. So it seems like maybe the longer she was on Housewives, the more money Erica started to make from her contract on The Real Housewives, which then in turn was covering expenses that didn't need to be paid by Girardi Keys because they were being paid by her housewife salary, is what I assume. Because like she said, all of the checks from Housewives or any endorsement deals or whatever, those were going directly to the law firm. And then from the law firm, the expenses were being paid. So it seems like as EJ Global was starting to make more money rather than paying off those previous, rather than paying off past loans, what they were doing is just covering current expenses for that year. And that's probably why Girardi Keys didn't need to pay out of Girardi Keys accounts, because there were checks to cover it from Housewives and other endorsement deals like Shoe Dazzle that she was getting, is what I assume. That's my own conjecture. But that to me would make the most sense. But again, the person that was overseeing all of this appears to be Christopher Camone, who was the CFO. He was overseeing the books for EJ Global. He was overseeing the financials and helping to put together the tax returns. So it's interesting. And I'm not sure what was under direct direction from Tom Girardi and what wasn't. But very interessante. But yeah, those are some interesting figures, from like 5 million, 2 million, 4 million, 1.5, 1.7, 1.8, 2.2, and then 850, 760, 107, 470, for 147, sorry, in 2020. Interesting. Well, I guess we'll have to continue to see how this all plays out. Like I said, the trial is expected to be wrapping up next week. I guess is what they're hoping for now that they're getting deep into the trial. So we'll see what happens. We shall see. But Tom Girardi is, again, his attorney is fighting to say that he had no real say over this because he was too busy, winning lawsuits in court. How was he supposed to know what was going on with the financials? Okay. That said, let's talk about the Real Housewives of Orange County star that has now or is being sued, possibly. So, Real Housewives of Orange County newbie Katie Janela. She's the one that's accusing Heather Dubrow of staging paparazzi photos. And we've covered that, and the photographer and the chances of the photographer just happening to be at Disneyland when he's a professional photographer, and how did he just happen to be there, and how did the photos look staged, and why would he choose to get photos of them being lovey-dovey versus trying to find and sell photos of them not being lovey-dovey, but instead them being, you know, on the fritz if the rumors were that they weren't doing well in their marriage, right? It was just a little fishy. Well, Katie, the newbie, she's now being sued over a flavored shot company. So obviously the canned cocktail seltzer world has blown up, right? So you have to be more creative and innovative. Now there's this new company that has shots, flavored shots. I think like Buzz Balls, I think they're kind of similar to this. But this product is specific for um, product is specific for golfers. So there's this guy, Chad Rusky. And Chad claims that he was in contact with this couple, Dolores and George Salmon. And they together discussed his idea, and he had this idea to create this product called the Golf Shot, which is a flavored shot, which is a ready to drink. It's ready to drink out of like a golf ball. So they have like a little golf ball shaped shot glass, and in it they have these flavored shots. They have like a margarita flavor and like different types. Um, so he called it the Golf Shot because, like I said, it was designed in like a golf ball. So apparently they discussed this idea and discussed a partnership, George Dolores and this Chad dude. And they were discussing this last year, 2023, February, and talked about wanting to form some sort of partnership for this business so that they can launch this company together. Well, come summer of 2023, so last summer, George and Dolores end up creating their own business with a product not called golf shots, but a product called tee shots. Because when you uh, are playing golf, you put the ball on a tee. So they have tee shots, TEE. And I guess they were hoping that with the launch of this business, they were going to partner with Katie Janela, who's the new Real Housewife on OC this season. They were going to partner with her on this idea, and were hoping to, at least what's alleged in the lawsuit, is they were hoping to leverage the Real Housewives of Orange County to help push the product because Katie would be able to talk about it. I'm assuming that's part of why Katie hosted like this golf day out, which is when she accused Heather of the staged paparazzi photos, and we bring all the girls together to learn how to golf. So I'm assuming this was all part of, her marketing plan to help promote this product. So this Chad Ruski guy, he's now suing for 5 million, or a minimum of 5 million is what he's claiming that they fraudulently stole his idea. And according to the Daily Mail, the lawsuit was filed on July 31st, but in a separate statement on behalf of Katie Janela and the Salmon couple, they have yet to be served with the lawsuit. Now, there are actual court documents because the court documents were provided to the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail was able to cover it and verify that they were filed on the 31st. But for whatever reason, Katie and the Salmon couple at the time of publishing did not, or claimed that they did not receive any formal lawsuit. But Katie also is claiming that she's never met this guy. She has no idea who this guy is. So she has no connection to him, no connection to his business idea. She did not steal the business idea. This was not her idea. What her exact role in the company is unknown. And what her exact relationship with this couple, George and Dolores, also unknown. But for whatever reason, she's named in the lawsuit. We see this happen all the time, though, where people will sue and include, very similar to Tom Girardi and Erica Jayne, right? They're including a lot of Erica in these lawsuits. Why? Because Erica is a household name. So they can leverage the press that they will garner from this and hopefully push their lawsuit forward and possibly get a settlement, which is usually the goal in these cases. When they want to pay out or a cash out, they usually aim for a settlement, which I'm assuming is what Rachel Leviss is hoping for. But yeah, I'm assuming they only named her in this lawsuit, hoping that it would make headlines because of Real Housewives of Orange County, which it is, right? We're talking about it. It's made headlines because it's like, oh no, Katie sued. However, because she has no relation to this guy, she was not part of the initial discussions about creating this golf shot. I'm sure she has no clue what any of this is about. So I would imagine she gets dismissed from this lawsuit. However, the headlines are still out there. The, attention to the lawsuit and to the product also still out there. But with this other couple, I mean, it does sound a bit shady, right? Because there were conversations that they were having with this what was it, Chad dude? Never trusted Chad, but there were conversations with the Chad, and Chad, you know, seems to feel confident that he has text messages that can prove that there were at least conversations that they were having about this product. So whether or not this is them, like how collaborative of, creating this product it was, why they decided to cut him out, why they didn't partner with him, are they legally allowed to move forward with this product if there was nothing formal in writing, if there's no trademark, if there's no patent, like all of those legal protections. If none of that existed, then I'm not entirely sure that he has much of a case other than, him trying to be on a fishing expedition to say, hey, this was my idea and they stole it. But if you don't have any rights to that idea, I don't know. A text message, yeah, as Mary Duda in the live chat says, a a text message is not a contract. I mean, it is technically in writing, so you can kind of fight that it was sort of a contract. You also are not allowed to steal people's IP, but like, is this considered his IP or did they just pull inspiration? Are they going to have to pay him some sort of finder's fee? I don't know. We're going to have to see how this all plays out in court, but that is the extent of the lawsuit with Katie Janela. Like I said, I predict that she will likely get dismissed from this lawsuit. And if anything, I'm assuming this couple will end up settling with this Chad dude. We'll see. Okay. We talked about Ariana Madix. We talked about Tom Girardi. We talked about the Traitors. We talked about the Orange County housewife that's being sued. I want to talk about this Chris Olsen stuff. Because this is really interesting. So we talk about it, like I said, we do discuss it. We filmed it on what's today, Wednesday. So we filmed this Tuesday evening. And over the weekend, I was seeing that this TikTok star, Chris Olsen, he was going on TikTok. And so backstory. Again, I give some of this backstory on the Pop Report. That way people are familiar with him. But so he gained popularity for posting a lot of pretty, like similar to like a pretty girl in a bikini that becomes an influencer because she's posting photos in her bikinis and on yachts and doing all this stuff. And she becomes like a wellness influencer. Very similar in the gay community. Lots of these guys post all these thirst traps without their shirts on, whatever. Chris Olsen, up until very recently, 2024, has continued to post these thirst trap photos of him in his underwear, very risque. You can see his bulge, whatever. So Joe Mendoza says, I used to watch Chris Olsen and Ian Pageant when they did YouTuber stuff together. I lost interest when they broke up. Yes. So he was, one of these cute influencer boys on Instagram. And then he ended up dating Ian Pageant, who is a dancer, who also, was gaining some social media popularity. Them together as a couple ended up be building like this TikTok brand and this YouTube brand where they would do a bunch of videos together. Ultimately, they ended up breaking up a couple years ago. They seem to be friendly or have some sort of a friendship, but they don't seem to be too close as of late, right? So that said, they gained most of their popularity by being a TikTok couple. Chris Olsen has continued to make content since the breakup. Ian does more dance videos. Chris Olsen does like, I have mental health issues and I want to talk about depression, and I'm going to come on TikTok and cry and share my feelings and be open about, my struggles with depression or anxiety, or, my journey with therapy. And he makes a lot of fun, cheeky content, uplifting content, humorous content. And I guess, he's recently received some backlash. Now, I say this as somebody that's been on the internet for quite some time, and I know that as nice and lovely, I mean, I always say, look at Donna Bowling from Daily Dose of Donna. Donna, very lovely woman, very lovely. I consider her a friend. We talk often. However, there are still these nasty Reddit pages that rip her apart, and I'm always like I get why people rip me apart. I have strong opinions. I am very, I stand firm in my convictions. I can be shady. I can be, a lot of different things. And I am who I am, right? And I put myself out there fully and unapologetically, which I know comes with a reaction from people. And so, but I also, I see that there are people that try to put out good, uplifting content that isn't always, I don't know, what am I deemed controversial or contrarian, like whatever you want to brand me as, chaotic, dramatic, whatever. I mean, I've been called every name in the book. It just kind of comes with time. And listen, I've even had friends that are creators that I've talked to, and I'm like, listen, and I try to help talk them off the ledge. I'm like, it's not easy. And being on the internet is not easy. Anybody with an opinion wants to just open themselves up and open up their big mouths and have strong opinions of you. And sometimes the things that they have to say aren't nice, and they're mean and they're derogatory and they're just nasty for the sake of being nasty, you know? Um, and that's kind of the double edged sword that we sign up for when we put our lives out there on the internet. I've had people say, really nasty, vile things about me, about my family, about my brother. My brother has autism. He's somebody that is more vulnerable. So I think it's a cheap shot when anybody wants to say anything negative about him or take shots at him. But like, I also know, and that's part of the reason I'm more mindful about how and when I share him in my content. Very recently in April, Autism Awareness Month, I talked about, autism and how he is, a representation of autism. And I disagree with celebrities like Holly Madison who try to, and Rumor Will, or not Rumor Willis, the other sister, I don't remember her name, but how there are celebrities that are coming out and trying to, claim that diagnosis and that label because it's become very trendy to talk about our mental health issues or our diagnoses on the internet. And there's a difference between bringing awareness to things and enlightening and teaching people through our experiences, and then there's, the I want to feel important, I want to make myself feel special, so I'm going to talk about certain things, right? Again, I've had really ugly, nasty, vile things said about me daily. My family, my brother, everything included. It comes with the territory. It's not nice. It's not pleasant, but it's part of the job, right? Same thing where if you're a football player, you know that injury, physical injury is possible on the football field. It's part of, what comes with the territory. These are the casualties that come with the industry. So I have empathy for Chris, and I hate that people are so mean to him considering he does try to put, very uplifting, funny content to, make people feel good. Um, but, it is what it is. So he's going on the line. He's, he was crying and talking about people being mean to him, and he's tired of this, and he's tired of people saying mean things to him. And then on top of him bringing in these negative comments that he's getting, he's now opened up this conversation potentially about revenge corn on the cop, which is what we're learning a lot about with Rachel Leviss and Tom Sandoval and Ariana Madix and their recent lawsuit, right? So I guess in addition to these negative comments, and this is where this is where the message kind of really gets lost, is because he's lumping a lot of things together. And what I don't like is when people try to absolve themselves of personal accountability by going on the internet and showing raw emotion and using that raw emotion to, in my opinion, manipulate their audience into feeling sympathy for them without taking accountability for their own contribution to things, right? So The negative comments are one thing, and that's kind of how the conversation started. Is he was going online and he was, having a bit of a meltdown or a bit of a breakdown. He was getting very emotional in his TikTok videos about the negative comments he was getting. But then he started to mix in the fact that people were on top of having to deal with these negative comments. He was also having to recently deal with revenge corn on the cob. And so I was like, oh, okay, what is this revenge corn on the cob? And so there are two pieces of content that we'll reference here, right? Because we have the negative comments, we have the photos that have surfaced, and then we have videos that have surfaced. Okay. So there are three different things that are now being mixed together into one message that he's trying to garner sympathy for. Or maybe not sympathy, maybe empathy. I don't know what his intention was, to be honest with you, but it's caused a much bigger conversation. And I had a lot of really strong opinions on the pop report, and I want to dive into it further here because I did dig a little deeper. So this is more context to the situation. So on top of him complaining about negative comments and saying that there was revenge corn on the cob that was done against him, he also said that, and so the two pieces of content that he's referencing are photos that are being shared online, right? Now, these are not photos like I took a nude selfie and sent it to a guy and he then published that online. What happened to Stassi Schroeder was an example of revenge corn on the cob. She sent an intimate video that was with her private parts. She sent it to her boyfriend at the time. He was then threatening to release that publicly, and Lisa Vanderpump had to come in and pay him off so that the video didn't get shared. The video was shared amongst Sir staffers, and Sheena Shea was one of the people that was circulating the video. Whatever, it was resolved. That to me is a true case of revenge corn on the cob because it was trying to embarrass somebody, it was trying to shame somebody, he was trying to extort, Stassi and Lisa Vanderpump from the fame of Vanderpump Rules. Another perfect example, which we saw play out in court, is Rob Kardashian and Black China. There were intimate photos that Black China shared with Rob Kardashian when they got into a fight. He then published those photos online. She then tried to sue him for revenge corn on the cob. And from there, they were able, after years of court battles, they were able to come up with a settlement and she was paid out. Those are clear cut, dry examples of revenge corn on the cob. Rachel Leviss and her lawsuit against Ariana and Tom is a little more dicey. It's not as clean cut and dry. Now, when it comes to Chris Olsen, so these two pieces of content, one of them is these photos. Okay. And so he says that these photos were taken when he was 19 and 20 years old. So he explains that these photos were taken with a professional photographer because at the time he was participating in multiple photo shoots with this photographer and other photographers to take thirst traps. That's the term that he used himself, thirst traps, because he wanted to gain validation. He was newly sober. He went to rehab, got clean. He was an alcoholic or is an alcoholic and no longer drinks. So at this time, he was coming out of rehab. He was getting really fit. He was feeling confident in his body. He wanted to seek validation. So this is common. Lots of photographers reach out to a lot of us and they want us to participate in these photo shoots. A lot of them are underwear photo shoots or nude photo shoots. It's very common. And there are so many gay guys in Los Angeles that do this all the time, in Los Angeles, in New York, wherever, right? They participate in these photo shoots often. And usually there's not a monetary exchange, but a permissions exchange, right? Where these professional photographers will take photos of you. You're allowed to share them on your Instagram because they'll probably get you some sort of attention, whether it's for your Instagram or for your, OF creators account, which we know Denise Richards is on OF, but I think she does more like amateur content on like the phone rather than professional content. But with OF, a lot of these photos also end up on, OF accounts, Instagram accounts, whatever. So Chris Olsen admitted to participating in multiple photo shoots, which he agreed to. He's now saying that with this photographer specifically, that he signed a release form and gave the photographer permission to own these photos, but he didn't know what that meant. He's like, I wasn't aware of what that meant in terms of what could happen with these photos. He's now 26. At the time, he was 19, 20. So he's saying, I was young, I was impressionable, I did not know what I was signing over in giving him the rights to these photos. Now, if you look up this photographer, which I did, his name is Trey McIntyre, TreymcIntyri. So Trey McIntyre. He is a professional photographer, and I looked him up. And his Instagram account and his website are very risque underwear photo shoots. A lot of photo shoots with his subjects showing their butt, fully exposed. They are nude. He also on his website is selling many of these nude photographs as portraits that you can buy because he doesn't consider himself just a photographer. He considers himself an artist. So, and these are very tastefully done photos, right? They're not, I would say, even more tasteful than like Playboy. They're not like Maxim style sexy photos. They're portraits. They're, very tastefully, artfully produced, captured. I don't know what the correct terminology is, but they're very tasteful shoots. So I guess at the time that he was taking these photos, he also created a Patreon account. So similar to on his website, you can buy printed portraits. He also had a Patreon account where he was uploading the photos as well. And so you would have access, you can pay for a subscription on his Patreon and have access to his collections of photos that he had. And so he owns the photos. He's allowed to do whatever he wants with them. Like I said, a quick, simple search on his Instagram and his website shows that a lot of the content, yes, some of it is very artsy, but a lot of it is very, tasteful nudes as well. So Chris Olsen says that he agreed to do a photo shoot, signed a release to give this photographer permission to own the photos and release them at his own accord. He signed a contract and, he understood that he wasn't being paid and that he would have permission to use the photos himself to post on his own Instagram. So he's now saying that this photographer pressured him and, pressured him to take off his clothes completely. And he says at the time that he felt uncomfortable and he didn't want to, but you know what? He didn't say no. And so he repeatedly says, I never said no. So I guess I deserve this in some way. Right. So he goes on to say that it wasn't just this one time where the photographer encouraged him to take his clothes off. He participated in multiple photo shoots. He participated in with other photographers and multiple photo shoots with this photographer specifically. So he was aware that these photos or that there was a potential that he would have to take his clothes off in these photo shoots and he continued to do so. Again, they're very tasteful. He's not rubbing one out. They're not very explicit. You're not seeing any back door. You're seeing booty, but like you're not seeing back door, full door open. They're portraits. Okay. Now, I guess Chris didn't know that this photographer was going to put them on Patreon. And Chris, I'm sure, also didn't predict that he was going to gain popularity and become famous on TikTok. So now that people know him and know his name, they have now found these photos on Patreon. Some people have screenshotted them and begun circulating them online. Now, an issue with that is anything on Patreon, similar to like a YouTube live stream, that is behind a paywall and there is copyright protections to prevent people from screenshotting and sharing. That happens with OF creators as well. If they're posting these photos on their OF accounts and you are paying a subscription to access these OF accounts, that content is meant to stay behind the paywall. It's not meant to be shared publicly. That's why a lot of those OF creators will flag people for copyright infringement if you share and repurpose those photos publicly online. So that's the issue with the nude photos of Chris Olsen and this photographer. The photos as of today are still up on the Patreon account. I don't believe that this photographer, Trey, has addressed this in any way, at least not since Chris Olsen released this statement. I believe it was on Sunday or Monday. So then we get to the third piece, and the third piece is these videos. And these videos are webcam videos of Chris Olsen when he was a webcam boy. And so cam boys is the term that they're referred to as, are people that, I mean, Farrah Abraham was doing this for a while. They're people that go on adult websites and you typically pay a subscription or you pay tips or you pay certain things. In order to view this content, right? And a lot of the times they're live streams. So it appears, yes, Joe says Chatterbait. Chatterbait is one of those adult websites. And Chris Olsen was participating in the content on this adult website and he was live streaming himself. And this is where the content is more explicit. The photographer photos, again, tasteful portraits. These are him, taking his clothes off, choking, what is it? Choking the not choking the dong, choking the chicken. Um, you know, he was rubbing the banana, he was jerking the chicken, he was doing all the things. He was, exposing his backside. He was opening up the back door and saying, "Welcome on in," essentially. That's me being creative with my wording. But it was a lot more explicit content that he was performing in these live stream videos. And so those live stream videos have now begun to resurface. And so now with the photographer photos, the mean comments, and these live stream videos, it's, adult content that he was performing. And so he's claiming it's not adult content and he was never an adult performer. He says that he was doing these things. He acknowledges that he was fully sober at the time of doing these things, but he says that they were bad behaviors because he was engaging in them to seek validation online because he was feeling confident in his body and wanted to seek validation. Now, his Instagram, as of recently, still includes underwear photos that are very risque. So it appears he's still trying to seek some sort of validation. Um, but it's a little dicey when you say that people sharing these videos that you consented to and these photos that you signed a release form for, people circulating those online. I understand that you didn't know that you were going to become famous. I understand that you didn't realize you were going to have the platform that you've built, but that doesn't exonerate you from the actions that you took as, a 19, 20, 21-year-old adult, you know? Um, Mary Duda says nobody remembers the Chris Evan release of his small dong, but he was a good sport about it. That's the thing, this stuff happens. There are leaks that happened most recently with Love Island, where one of the islanders he says that he gave his phone to somebody that he expected to have privacy with while he was on the island. Somebody went through his content on his phone and ended up releasing photos where he was also opening up his back door. He was bending over and saying, "Welcome on in, welcome on in, welcome on in." And that video was circulating all over the internet. So there are cases where there's content that was intended to remain private that was then circulated. Now, the interesting thing is, this was not content that was ever intended to be. I was having a conversation with somebody about this yesterday, and they're like, well, if he didn't agree to these live streams being circulated, then, that's wrong. And I was like, well, that's very similar to me going on Instagram Live. And when I go on Instagram Live, people screen record and reshare things all the time. When I'm broadcasting live to the general public, I don't have an expectation of privacy. Just like right now, even if I want to take this down, I know that there's a chance that people have seen this, that people are recording this. Like that's within the realm of possibility when you are broadcasting something live on the internet. And there's a chance, they always say when you put something on the internet, it's there forever, So somebody recording themselves, or live streaming themselves doing explicit acts isn't very different from somebody like myself that can go on Instagram Live or TikTok Live and broadcast myself there, So my issue with this is the conversation has become about revenge corn on the cob. He's, said that this is traumatizing for him to have people share these photos and videos online. My issue with using the word traumatized is I think he's embarrassed, not traumatized. And I think when you include, assault, SA, which is, the explicit or the adult type of assaults, right? Because you have to be mindful of the terms you use on YouTube. But so SA, when you say that certain things are SA or you relate them to circumstances of SA, and then you say that, people sharing these things online is traumatizing for you, like we need to be mindful because those are really powerful words. And there are people that genuinely experience SA. I don't think you're traumatized. I think you're embarrassed. And that's okay because you can use this as a teachable moment to say, hey, I was a kid. I did some dumb shit. Same way where if I were to get a tramp stamp that I want to have removed now in my 30s, like you make mistakes. And listen, there are circumstances where in LA, like that's a story as old as time, where you're in circumstances where photographers are like, let me take headshots of you. And then they like want you to take your clothes off. And like stuff like that does happen. We can use these as teachable moments to say, these things happen, but also this is what happened to me. But also, I want you to know you have the opportunity to say no. You can walk out. Make sure you read the contracts before you sign them. Like there's a way to make these teachable moments rather than, you know, trying to look for sympathy. Trauma and embarrassment are very different. I agree. And I don't think that when you make choices where you sign agreements to and continue to participate in photo shoots with the same photographer that you claim has made you uncomfortable, but yet you continue to engage in working with this person. It's not like this was your boss, where your boss can fire you. And if your boss fires you, there's money on the line and you need to make an income. And if your boss makes you uncomfortable, you kind of just stay quiet because you don't want to lose your job. There are positions of power that people abuse. This was not a position of power where somebody abused it. This is two people that were technically adults. Now, again, this photographer was a little bit older. I believe he's now in his 40s. Chris was 19, 20, 21 at the time. Um, and I believe still continues to participate in photo shoots like this. And based off of the photos that I've seen on his Instagram recently. But it's like, yes, there is a difference in age. And yeah, there's a bit of a power dynamic in there. But when you are choosing to to take these actions repeatedly, this becomes a pattern. And not only are you engaging in these photo shoots, but you're also engaging in these live streams on the internet, all of which are explicit content. That's where it gets a little more challenging. But this is where we learn to use these as teachable moments and moments where we can take accountability for our actions. Like, why isn't the message, hey, don't, rub one out on FaceTime with with somebody that you're having an affair with, because you never know how things are going to go. Oh, my manager's FaceTiming me. Is he what? David, are you watching this? He's like, Zach, get off the internet. What are you saying right now? No, I'm just kidding. He's probably, hopefully, calling me with good news. But, that's kind of where we're at. Wanda says, of course, it's wrong to record and show others OF videos or other paid content. But the reality is that there's always at least one who records them. There's always that chance, right? That's why they say don't share nude photos of yourself, because there's a chance that they can get out there. Don't take those photos if you don't want that type of content out there, you know? So, oof, yeah. It's literally, but yeah, he's saying that he's not a corn on the cob star. He's not an adult performer, even though he did engage in some very adult content that I think he needs to take accountability and responsibility for. Now, the other element is he's very close friends with Megan Trainor and Megan Trainor's husband. They make content together a lot. Megan Trainor and her husband have both been going on the internet and making these funny videos about, like, don't be mean to my best friend. Or I think Megan Trainor's husband went and was like, I will allow if you're going to if somebody's mean to you, then I'll allow you to do anything, even murder. And it's like cheeky and it's a joke, right? And it's done with levity. And so my thing is, it's like, if what your friend is going on the internet and saying is really of that seriousness, then why are your friends taking it so lightly and creating these funny videos where you're like, don't be mean to Chris Olsen? Um, to me, the fact that they're not taking it that seriously and this is their friend and the accusations that he's claiming are very big, saying that this photographer took advantage of him, saying that this recirculation of these photos and videos is traumatizing for him. Like, those are big words. And if that's really the case, then I wouldn't want my friends to be making funny content. I would want my friends trying to make sure that my mental health is okay. I don't need my friends making content like that, because then that tells me that behind the scenes, it's probably not that serious. Um, okay, Brian says toxic, traumatic, are overused. It's okay. And FYI, this guy's photos of him are in great shape and have got the rest of us like, okay, dude. Yeah, he looks great in these photos. He continues. If you go on his Instagram right now, you can go right on. Let's see. You can go on his photos. Look at, here we go. We have from 4 days ago. You have photos of him on the beach without his shirt on. That's totally. Oh, this is where I think he says. Oh, this is his actual statement, which I'll read for you. But it's interesting that he chooses to post a shirtless picture with his statement. But you have more where you see his legs, you see him without a shirt on, you see lots of photos on his Instagram without his shirt on. And I think there was I just saw one of him in, like, his underwear. So, these are common. Like, he posts thirst traps often. And that's not to say, oh, because a woman wears a short skirt, she deserves it. But I think we're kind of trying to mix the two together. Look at this from January. It's literally one of these professional photo shoots of him in his underwear, in his tidy whities, on his Instagram account right now. So this type of content he's still engaging in and still seeking that validation that he claims he doesn't want or is not trying to seek anymore. So that's where to me it becomes a little challenging. As Dorinda says, say it, forget it, write it, regret it, or photograph it for that matter. Yeah. Wanda Lee says, as long as the internet has been alive, it's always been don't put anything in the internet that you don't want others to see. It's very true, right? And it's not like this was 30 years ago. This wasn't back in the 90s when you didn't know, where you like Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee. They filmed something on a videotape. There was no understanding that a videotape would then be distributed as a DVD and then passed around everywhere. Technology had not quite advanced to that point yet. Nobody knew that with Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian's tapes, that those would be on a video, well, not just video, but like online and circulated throughout the internet. We're talking about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, the internet wasn't brand new. Posting intimate photos, like at that point, that was after isanyoneUp.com. IsanyoneUp.com is what started the laws about revenge porn on the cob. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting. The bulge is giving Kardashian Photoshop. Even his selfie in the mirror was just knee-high socks and jeans was great. Yeah, I mean, listen, those are the photos that are out there. He was 19, he agreed to be a model and agrees to give the rights to the photographer. So that's true. Wanda says, I hate victim blaming, but I also hate that some people don't take accountability. That's where I'm conflicted, is because it's like I don't want to come off as I am victim blaming because I'm not victim blaming him. But I'm also saying you do need to take accountability. There's again, victim blaming is saying a woman wore a short skirt, therefore she was asking for it. This is not that case. This is very different. And I think trying to compare or trying to put the two in the same category is a very risky and dangerous territory that we're putting ourselves in, right? Because then anybody can say anything and it can automatically it blows things completely out of proportion. And again, we can use these as teachable moments. He can say, hey, this experience happened to me with a photographer when I was young. I felt uncomfortable. I want you to know you can say no. I want you to be aware that there are photographers that are predators that are out there. There are ways to go about these things that is empowering to people and that doesn't continue to turn you into the perpetual victim, right? So and the reason I say perpetual victim is because he took three very different things: negative comments online, photos from this photographer, and videos from his past. All three of these negative things that are then being pulled together as the internet is being toxic. I'm being traumatized. This reminds me of when I was essayed in the past. It's just, yeah, Joe. Yeah, it's interesting. It could have been done better. The photos could have been done better. Um, his response to it could have been better. But I think we're in this culture now where we like to make ourselves the perpetual victim. We like to come out and say, I have, you know, autism. I'm self-diagnosed with autism and I have ADHD and I have bipolar and I have dementia and I have, all these other terms that I've self-diagnosed myself with to make me feel important. I'm not just gay anymore. I'm queer and I have mental health and I have all these things that are wrong with me that make me feel special. And I think that's also very dangerous because, yes, it does destigmatize some of these things. But at the same time, you're also taking away an experience from somebody that genuinely struggles with that, with somebody that is truly has debilitating bipolar disorder. That's why I had an issue with somebody like Holly Madison or Bruce Willis's daughter coming out and saying, I have a later in life autism diagnosis. I'm autistic now. And it's like you're identifying with this term that makes you feel special when you don't realize there are people that struggle with this and it is debilitating and it affects their daily quality of life. It's 2024. Everybody is a victim these days. Very true, end up. And that's the thing is we're not all victims. And when do we repurpose the conversation from turning everybody into a victim to empowering people? We're putting people at a disadvantage when we would rather allow them to be victims rather than allow them to be empowered individuals that have control over the decisions that they make in their lives. Christina says, I call the false labeling unless a doctor has told you and you have test results and you're on the spectrum. That's why they have them in the first place. The issue is now you can, I mean, similar to like when you have a deviated septum, right? You can go and pay off any doctor to give you a diagnosis. It's just it's unfortunate, and you're like, "I want a nose job, but I wanna say that I have a deviated septum." You find the right doctor to do that, or you find there's a certain pill that you want, and you find the right doctor that's gonna be like, "Okay, I'll prescribe you this because, whatever." Joe says, Chris Olsen's pictures were great and not many people with versatile leanings, usually some that have their, schlong lean to the left or to the right." Yeah. If I stay off the internet, he wouldn't be traumatized, stop fueling the fire, disappear, and so would the photos. That's the other thing. I come up and take a beating on the internet every fucking day. That's what I sign up for. And when it becomes too much for me, I will walk away from this. Nobody is forcing me to do this. Nobody is forcing me to put my opinions and my life and my, you know, family out there. That's just what I've chosen to do. And I know that it's a double edged sword. And I know that there are consequences to my actions. I know that there are reactions that people will have to my choices or to my words. I have to own that. I've always owned that. And the hard part is when you do own it, you're often painted as the villain more than you're painted as the hero. And I've come to terms and accepted that, right? You know, um, I look at somebody like Kristen Cavallari or even Shannon Doherty. They were people that were polarizing. They're people that were very strong in their convictions, and they were people that were often labeled as the villain, the bitch, the bad person, whatever, the difficult one. And listen, they had to own that and be like, I'm going to be unapologetically me. If you want to then cast me as the villain or cast me as the bitch or cast me as whatever, that's part of the cross that I have to bear by choosing to stay in this. Um, and that's just what I mean. I've developed a thick skin, yes, but I always tell, um, my friends that have a hard time when they and listen, I also have friends that bring me back down to earth sometimes too. But I always tell them, I'm like, listen, when you're choosing to put yourself out there publicly, it is kind of like going to the gym, right? You're gonna walk in and you're gonna only have to be able to lift 5-pound weights because 10 pounds is gonna be too heavy. And sometimes after a good gym session, you're gonna come out and your body's gonna hurt and your body's gonna be sore. But the more you go into the gym, the more practice you get, the heavier you start to lift, eventually you build the muscle mass and you get stronger. And that's kind of how it is when it comes to developing a thick skin. The more you put yourself out there, the more you are unafraid about getting backlash because you're going to get backlash and you're going to get whipped left and right. The more whippings you take, the more of a thicker skin you build. You develop the calluses, you develop the scar tissue. Like your skin does get stronger. Sometimes it's really hard and it does mess with your mental health because it does weigh on you. But, it's not something that any of us are forced to do. It's something that a lot of us choose to do. And when it does become to be too much, like Rachel Leviss and Vanderpump Rules, you need to know when to walk away. And that's okay. Nobody's going to hate you for walking away because you needed to protect your mental health. Gabby Hanna, she went a little cuckoo on the internet and she had a breakdown moment online and she completely left the internet and now does like Zumba at the YMCA. She does fitness classes at the YMCA because she wanted to retire from social media life. And Deb says, that's funny. My stepsister will say that Elsie was always a B in high school and Kristen was the nicest. Yes, but that's because Elsie wanted to project the nice girl image. And Kristen Cavallari was unafraid of how people were going to cast her. She didn't care what people thought of her as long as she was truly authentic to herself. And when you're truly authentic to yourself, that can trigger people. And it triggers people's insecurities. And so again, it's easier to cast Kristen Cavallari as the villain because Kristen shows us the ugly sides of her or the bad parts of her, whereas LC doesn't want you to see any of the bad parts first. So all you see are the good parts. So she easily gets cast as the protagonist. Whereas Kristen Cavallari, she shows you two bad sides. She may have 10 great parts of her, but she shows you two parts that people think is unsavory. And suddenly, because they have those two parts, that becomes the full ammunition. And that's just who you are. You know, I've had to learn to come and accept that. I can be an amazing person 95% of the week, and then the 5% I'm a real bitch to somebody, and suddenly, because my life is played out on the internet, that's often what, people will focus on, is that 5% rather than the other 95%, because then there's somebody else on the internet that will give you 100% that may be fake, but that 100% is always good. And so that's all you see. That's me, take it or leave it. Exactly. There you go. Resiliency training is needed more than therapy these days. Major key life skills. I agree. I think a lot of therapy conditions people to become victims rather than conditions them to become resilient individuals that are empowered to take control of their lives. And the more we don't empower people to take control of their lives, the more they will continue to be a victim, and the more they will continue to get it taken advantage of by people that are in positions of power, or the people that do have an upper hand in some way, or even people that aren't even in power. But if you constantly view yourself as somebody that is vulnerable, then you're often going to be in a vulnerable state that anybody can come in and do any little thing to you, and suddenly you fall right down that rabbit hole of victimhood. Whew. Laura says, "This is the chat everyone needs to have." I hope so, you know? Michelle says, "Emotional regulation needs to be a priority in early education." Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's not the direction that we're going in. We're going in the complete opposite direction. It's not about emotional regulation, it's about validation for our feelings. When our feelings are not facts, our feelings are, fleeting things that come up. They come and they go, but just because I feel a certain type of way doesn't mean it aligns with the objective reality. Brian says, "I would have never thought I'd be working in Taiwan and India, try different things, go different places. We are all so fucking great at our lives. Love this chat." Absolutely. I love this chat as well. I think that this community that tunes into this podcast every day, and what we refer to as the Zack Pack, I think is such an intelligent and emotionally savvy. Not just we don't just have critical thinking skills, but I think we're also emotionally intelligent. And I think that we're able to really look at things and look at the nuance of things. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys think of this episode of the Pop Report. I do go pretty hard. Andy and I kind of have a little bit of a juxtaposition in our approach to tackling the Chris Olsen stuff. So I welcome you guys to comment on, YouTube as well, or comment on Spotify, or leave reviews and give your honest thoughts and opinions and feedback. I open myself up to all of it, good, bad, ugly, pretty, everything, every little bit. I open myself up to. I don't take any of it personal anymore. So I welcome and appreciate and give gratitude to the good, and I leave the negative. So, but I think if anything, it opens up a deeper conversation. But I encourage you to watch it and comment on YouTube. The episode is now up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. You guys should invite Chris Olsen on the Pop Report. I don't think Chris Olsen will come on the Pop Report. I've never met him. But I'll just say I know people who have met him, and they don't care for him. So I don't think that invite would be welcomed on the Pop Report. So yeah. Sydney says, "Zach, you're so right. This community is a great one that you've brought together. I really enjoy a lot of these people." I do too. I do too. Listen, Joe, I would absolutely be comfortable talking. Listen, I invited Rachel Leviss on this podcast. I would not be afraid of inviting Chris Olsen on this podcast, but it's not going to be, I don't do fluff interviews. I like to have difficult conversations, because I think, very similar to the episode that you saw with me and Jeff on Disaster Daters, those difficult conversations are going to be rocky. They're going to be tough to get off the ground. They're going to be rocky in the middle. They're going to get frustrating at points. But by the end of it, I do believe that there are breakthroughs and resolution, as long as both people are willing to put down their guards and meet each other in the end. So I'm not fully intentionally against the opportunity to have a conversation with Chris Olsen, but it wouldn't be an easy conversation. It would be an uncomfortable one, and I think an important one. Amy says, "I love your real take on everything. You don't pull punches, but you still remain respectful." I try to. Listen, I throw a few punches myself. You know, I've taken a few jabs. End up says, "I feel like Rachel would malfunction and shit down and shut down mid-interview. I agree. I think she'd be like, beep, 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 and you'd see smoke coming out of her ears. I agree. Okay, we're already past the 1 hour mark. So thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode of No Filter with Zack Peter. Be sure to tune into the Pop Report and weigh in. So there's a lot that we dive into in this episode. We also talk about Blake Lively and the there's my manager. Call me when you have a sec. Uh-oh, am I in trouble? He's like, Chris Olsen's manager called. They want to meet with you. But yeah, definitely tune in, leave a review, leave a comment, subscribe if you enjoy the show. I love you guys. I appreciate you. You can follow me at Just Plain Zack all over the internet. Follow the podcast at No Filter with Zack on Instagram, and just keep spreading the love. No hate, all love. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Be accountable. Go out there and know that you are an empowered bad bitch that nobody can stop. So go live your best life. Own your day. Secure the bag. There you go, N-Dub. Secure the bag. All right, guys. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Ciao for now. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.